5 years old, first solo, and he walked away from the microphone towards someone nobody else noticed. Why? The stage lights were too bright. Michael blinked twice, his small hand gripping the chrome mic stand that reached his chest. The metal was cold, and he could feel the vibration from Tito's guitar cable running beneath the plywood floor. The community center stage smelled like fresh paint and old wood that creaked underfoot. Someone had mopped earlier. The sharp scent of pine cleaner still hung in the air. 60 folding chairs filled the room in uneven rows. Mothers fanned themselves with paper programs in the August heat. Fathers adjusted cameras with flashbulbs. Children fidgeted in Sunday clothes, their patent leather shoes tapping against the linoleum floor. His brothers stood behind him in matching burgundy vests their mother had sewn by hand last week. Jackie, 14, adjusted his guitar strap for the third time, fingers nervous on the frets. Tito tapped the mic twice. Thump, thump, and the feedback whined before settling into silence. Jermaine grinned at the front row where their father sat, arms crossed, face unreadable. Marlon, only 3 years old, sat on a wooden stool near the drum kit, clapping his hands off beat, humming to himself. This was Michael's moment, his first real solo. 8 bars. Just his voice filling the room. No harmonies, no backup. Just him and the melody his mother had drilled into him 40 times in their living room. Don't rush the second line. Let it breathe. Feel it. He'd felt it then. But now, standing under lights that made his eyes water, with 60 people watching and his brothers waiting, and the air pressing down like a weight on his chest, his throat felt tight. Not from fear. He'd sung before. This was something else. A knot he didn't have words for yet. Backstage, a narrow hallway behind a black velvet curtain that smelled like mothballs and decades of stored costumes, someone had fallen. Michael had seen it through the gap in the fabric while waiting for his cue. He stood with his brothers crowding around him in the dim light. An older woman in a floral dress, maybe 65 or 70 years old, gray hair pinned back in a neat bun, carrying a stack of blue hymn books taller than her chin. She'd been hurrying, her low heels clicking on the tile floor. Her shoe, a scuffed black pump with a worn heel, caught the edge of a sound cable taped down with silver duct tape. The books scattered like startled birds. She went down on one knee with a soft gasp. Michael heard it even through the curtain. Then she sat back hard against the cinder block wall, one hand pressed flat to her chest, breathing in short, shallow pulls. Michael's stomach dropped. He took half a step toward the curtain, but Jackie's hand landed firm on his shoulder. "Stay here. We're on in 1 minute." Michael nodded, but his eyes stayed locked on the woman through the narrow gap. 2 men in dark suits rushed past her toward the stage door, their dress shoes loud on the tile. A younger woman in a white apron, probably from the church kitchen, glanced over her shoulder, slowed for half a second, then kept walking with a tray of paper cups rattling in her hands. Nobody stopped. The coordinator, a man in a brown polyester jacket with a metal clipboard and a pencil tucked behind his ear, stood 5 feet from the woman, tapping his watch face with 2 impatient fingers. He muttered something sharp to a stagehand in a denim shirt. "We're 2 minutes behind schedule. Get those kids out there right now. People are waiting." The woman pressed both hands to her chest. Her eyes were open, focused, tracking the movement around her. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't crying out. But she was alone, sitting on a cold floor in a dim hallway while people stepped around her like she was a piece of furniture someone forgot to move. Michael felt something twist deep in his chest. Not fear, not sadness exactly, but something sharper, a pull. His mother's voice echoed in his head, the same thing she said every Sunday morning before church, her hand on his shoulder as they walked through the parking lot. "When you see someone who needs help, you help. You don't wait for someone else to do it. You don't pass by. You just help." But the music was starting. The bass line rumbled through the wall. The audience was clapping along. His brothers were counting on him. His father was watching from the front row. What should he do? The bass line dropped, deep and steady. Jermaine's fingers walked the strings in that pattern Michael had heard 1,000 times in rehearsal. The audience clapped on 2 and 4. Michael's stomach flipped. His cue was 4 bars away, 16 beats. He could count them in his sleep, but his feet felt glued to the stage floor. He glanced at the hallway through the narrow slit in the curtain. The woman was looking right at him now, not pleading, not demanding, just looking. Her expression was soft, almost apologetic, embarrassed maybe that she'd fallen, or grateful that someone, anyone, had noticed she was there. Her hands trembled slightly in the dim hallway light. His feet moved before his brain could stop them. One step back, then another, away from the mic stand, away from the bright lights that made his eyes water, toward the black curtain that separated the stage from everything else. Jackie's head snapped around mid-strum. "Michael?" His voice cracked on the second syllable. Tito missed a note, a sharp clang of strings, and shot a confused look toward the wings. The coordinator's voice cut through the music like a knife. "Who's getting that kid? He's supposed to be on stage right now. Someone grab him before we lose the whole intro." But Michael was already pushing through the curtain, the heavy fabric brushing against his face, the smell of dust and old velvet filling his nose. The hallway was cooler than the stage, dimmer. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then held steady with a low electric hum that filled the space. The woman sat against the wall, her floral dress spread around her in a wide circle. Hymn books lay scattered in a rough pattern, some face up, showing worn covers, some face down with bent pages. She looked up as Michael approached, and her eyes widened. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm fine, really. Just clumsy old me. You should be singing out there." Her voice was kind but firm, the way a grandmother talks when she doesn't want to be fussed over, doesn't want to be a burden. Michael shook his head. The words came out small and quiet. "You're by yourself." He crouched down, his knees popping softly. He started picking up the books, his small hands barely able to hold 2 at a time. 1 book, 2 books, 3. The blue covers were worn at the edges, the gold lettering faded. One had a torn corner. Michael smoothed it down carefully with his thumb, trying to make it look better. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She didn't wipe them away. She just watched him work, this 5-year-old boy. He'd walked away from his spotlight to pick up her scattered books. On stage, Jackie was vamping, stretching the intro, repeating the first 4 bars over and over, buying time. His fingers moved on autopilot while his eyes kept darting toward the wings, trying to understand what was happening. The audience murmured. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. Tito shot a panicked look at Jermaine, who just shrugged and kept playing, his bass holding the rhythm together. Their father leaned forward in his chair, jaw tight, hands gripping the armrests. The coordinator stormed toward the hallway, his clipboard clutched in one white-knuckled hand, his face flushed red. He reached the curtain just as Michael stacked the last hymn book carefully into the woman's lap. The books formed a neat tower now, edges aligned. Michael brushed a small piece of lint off the top cover, making sure everything looked right. The coordinator grabbed Michael's shoulder, not rough, but firm. "Urgent! You're on in 10 seconds. Move, now!" Michael looked up at him. The man's face was all sharp angles in the fluorescent light. A vein pulsed in his temple. Sweat beaded on his forehead. But Michael's gaze slid past him, back to the woman sitting against the wall. "She needs help." His voice was steady despite the tears pooling in his eyes, making everything look blurry. The coordinator exhaled hard through his nose. "Someone else will help her. That's not your job. You need to sing. That's what you're here for." Michael didn't budge. His small shoulders squared, spine straight. But nobody did. The words hung in the air. The coordinator stared at him. 1 second. 2, 3. The hallway was silent except for the muffled bass line bleeding through the wall and the persistent hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Then the woman spoke. Her voice was steady, clear, louder than it had been. "He's right. Nobody did. Let him stay." The coordinator's jaw worked. He looked at Michael, at the woman, at his clipboard where the set list was printed in neat block letters. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then he turned on his heel and yelled toward the stage, his voice bouncing off the cinder block walls. "Jackie, take the solo! Michael Vout!" The music stuttered for half a beat, a moment of confusion. Then Jackie's voice came through the speakers, young and uncertain, but trying his best. The audience clapped. The show went on. That's what shows do. They go on. But wait, don't skip this part. Because what happened next wasn't about the song. It was about what songs are supposed to do in the first place. It was about why. Anyone sings at all. Katherine Jackson stood in the wings, pressed against the wall beside a stack of folding chairs someone had left there. One hand covered her mouth. She'd seen the whole thing through the gap in the curtain. She'd watched her youngest son, the one with the voice that made grown men cry, the one she'd been coaching and grooming for this exact moment since he was old enough to carry a tune, walk away from his spotlight. She'd seen him cry. She'd seen him choose. And now, as the coordinator stormed back toward the stage muttering angry words under his breath, she moved, fast. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile as she pushed through the curtain, the fabric swinging heavy behind her. She dropped to her knees beside Michael without hesitation, her dress pooling on the cold floor. She pulled him into her arms. "Baby, what happened? Tell me what happened." Michael buried his face in her shoulder. His whole body shook. She fell. Nobody stopped. Nobody stopped. His voice was muffled against the fabric of her dress, but she heard every single word. Katherine looked at the woman. The woman nodded slowly, a small smile on her lips despite the tears on her cheeks. "I'm all right now, thanks to him, this sweet boy." Katherine's hand cupped the back of Michael's head. Her fingers tangled gently in his hair. She didn't scold him. She didn't say he'd disappointed anyone. She didn't mention the missed cue or the confused audience, or his father's rigid posture in the front row. She just held him close. And then she said the 5 words that would echo in his head for the rest of his life. 5 words that would shape every choice he made from that day forward, on stage and off. You did the right thing. On stage, Jackie finished the song. His voice cracked on the high note. But he pushed through. The final chord rang out. The audience clapped. Steady, warm applause. Some looked confused. Where was the little one? But most didn't notice. The show went on. But backstage, in a dim hallway that smelled like floor wax and old paper, a 5-year-old boy learned something no rehearsal could teach. One choice, one moment, one person. The countdown had started. When Michael turned from the mic, 8 bars left, 6 seconds to his cue, 4 steps to the hallway, 2 books at a time in his hands, one decision that split his world into before and after. But the decision wasn't about success or failure. It was about seeing. Most people walked past the woman. They had reasons, good reasons. The show was starting. They had responsibilities. Someone else would handle it. But Michael was 5. He didn't have reasons yet, just instinct. And his instinct said, "She's alone, and I can't leave her that way." Because 5 doesn't mean you can't feel someone else's loneliness. You just don't have the language yet. So you use what you have. Your hands, your time, your presence. Later, after the show ended and the chairs were stacked, and the lights went dark, Catherine sat with Michael on the front steps. The night air had cooled. A breeze rustled the trees. Michael's vest hung open, collar askew. His mother held his hand. "Do you know why I'm proud of you?" Michael shook his head. He'd been quiet. His father had said nothing. Not angry, just silent. Jackie patted his head, but nobody did. Catherine squeezed his fingers. "Because you stopped. A lot of people, grown people with degrees and important jobs, they don't stop. They see something wrong and say, someone else will handle it. But you stopped. That's harder than singing." Michael looked at his shoes, scuffed at the toes. "But I didn't sing." Catherine tilted his chin up. "You will sing. Thousands of times. Stages everywhere. But tonight, you did something better. You saw someone. A car drove past, headlights sweeping across them. And that's who I want you to be, on stage or off, the person who sees." Michael leaned into her. She kissed his head. They sat listening to crickets and distant traffic. In that silence, something took root, a lesson without words. Here's the part you can't miss. 3 months later, the Jackson 5 played another show. A real theater with velvet seats and professional lighting. 500 people. New matching outfits. Michael's solo came and he hit every note. Clean, clear, powerful. The crowd stood. His brothers cheered. But before Michael took his bow, he did something nobody expected. He looked at the wings. Not for approval. He looked to see if anyone needed help. His eyes scanned backstage. A stagehand adjusting cable. A woman with a clipboard. Everyone was fine. Michael nodded, a tiny movement, and turned back. That habit stayed. The looking, the checking, as automatic as breathing. Not because someone told him to, because once, at 5, he'd learned that stopping mattered more than spotlights. The stagehand who'd rushed past the woman found Catherine after the show. "Mrs. Jackson?" The stagehand approached, hands in pockets. "Your son, Michael, he's got something special. Not just talent, heart." Catherine's expression softened. "I know." He looked at the ground. "I should have stopped. When that woman fell, I figured someone else would." He trailed off. "I won't make that mistake again. Your son taught me something." Catherine smiled. "Then he helped 2 people today." The stagehand pulled out a crumpled business card. "If you ever need crew, any show, you call me. I work free for that kid." Catherine took the card. They shook hands. "Now, remember the opening question. Why did a 5-year-old walk away from the microphone towards someone nobody else noticed?" The answer isn't complicated. Empathy doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't check the schedule. It just moves. One step, one choice, one person. Michael didn't think about legacy. He thought about a woman sitting alone on a cold floor, and he couldn't walk past her. That's everything. The instinct to stop when everyone else keeps moving. The stage went on. Jackie sang. The audience clapped. But in a dim hallway, a 5-year-old made a decision that mattered more than any note. He chose presence over performance. And his mother knelt beside him and said the only thing that mattered. "You did the right thing." That's the story. Not about the kid who could sing better than anyone. This is about the kid who could see. The one who stopped when stopping wasn't easy. The one who put someone else's dignity ahead of his spotlight. And that kindness, planted a 5 in a hallway nobody remembers, grew into something that would define every stage he stood on. Because the best performers don't just move an audience, they see them. Michael learned to see long before he learned to perform.